Right before the recital, she whispered, "Let's see her perform without drugs." Elodie collapsed. At the rehearsal dinner, I slid a lab report across the table. Her fiancé read it out loud. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about the moment I realized my own mother and sister had tried to kill my daughter, all because of an envy so venomous it threatened to shatter everything I held dear. It was a wake-up call that forced me to finally fight back, not just for Elodie, but for myself. The golden light of the stage felt almost sacred, pooling around the grand piano as my daughter, Elodie, walked toward it. She's my miracle, my 11-year-old triumph against every impossible medical odd. I sat there in the third row, program clutched so tight my knuckles were white, my chest swelling with a familiar, fierce pride. Her burgundy dress shimmered under the lights. She settled onto the bench, those slender fingers hovering, and for 3 heartbeats, I counted them in my own pulse. She paused. Then, the first haunting notes of Debussy's Clair de Lune filled the hall. The audience, the world, it all just disappeared. There was only Elodie, the music, and this invisible thread connecting us, woven tight through every hospital visit, every midnight medication. Check, every single victory we'd fought for. I breathed with her, silently counting the measures. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It was my own ritual, steadying me just as her daily pills steadied her. Then, a flicker. A hesitation. My counting faltered. Her right hand paused, just a fraction too long. Most people wouldn't have noticed, but to me, it felt like a skip in my own heartbeat. Her left hand kept going, trying to compensate, but something shifted in her posture. A tremor. Another stumble, this time sharper, more pronounced. Her shoulders tensed. The delicate architecture of the music began to crumble around her. I leaned forward, suddenly acutely aware of the hard wooden chair digging into my thighs. The mother radar that had kept Elodie alive for 11 years screamed inside my skull. Then, her fingers lifted completely from the keys. The silence that followed was deafening, terrifying. I saw her sway once, then twice. My heart stopped. Elodie crumpled. Her forehead struck the keys with a terrible, discordant crash, and she slid sideways off the bench, onto the stage floor. Elodie. The scream tore from my throat before I even realized I was standing. I shoved past knees and handbags, stumbling over feet in my desperate rush toward the stage. "Let me through. I'm her mother." By the time I reached her, a small crowd had already gathered. The recital coordinator, Mrs. Bennett, was uselessly fanning Elodie's face with a program. Someone suggested opening a window. Stage fright, a voice whispered. Performance anxiety, another offered. I pushed through them all, dropping to my knees beside my daughter. Her face was paper white. Her breathing was so shallow. I cradled her head in my lap, my fingers instinctively searching for her pulse, too fast, too thready. "Elodie, honey," I whispered, brushing damp hair from her forehead. "Can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered, but didn't open. "Someone call 911. My hospital administrator voice, sharp and commanding, cut through the murmurs. I reached for her small crossbody purse, my fingers fumbling with the zipper to find her medication case, the one that never left her side. The familiar blue plastic container clicked open in my palm. The pills looked right, small, round, white. But after 11 years of measuring, counting, dispensing medication, I'd learned to recognize the subtlest differences. These were too white, too uniform, too perfect. I hesitated only a moment before touching my tongue to the edge of one. No bitterness, just sweet dissolution. Sugar, ice flooded my veins as understanding crashed through me. I looked up at the circle of concerned faces, suddenly seeing them all as potential threats. "Someone tampered with her medication," I announced, my voice dangerously calm. The crowd drew back, slightly confused. "These are sugar pills. Without her medication, Elodie's condition would deteriorate over hours, not minutes. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate, calculated. timed for maximum public impact. The EMTs pushed through the crowd just as Elodie stirred slightly in my arms. "Ma'am, we need to check her vitals," a young paramedic said, kneeling beside us. I nodded, but didn't release my grip on Elodie. Her name is Elodie Lawrence. She has congenital adrenal hyperplasia. Someone replaced her medication with sugar pills. His eyes widened briefly before his professionalism took over. "We'll start in 4 right away." "How long since her last proper dose?" My mind raced backward through our morning routine. Elodie at the kitchen counter, counting pills into her daily organizer while I packed her recital bag. Then, the memory crashed into another. My sister Sloane's unexpected visit. Her too bright smile as she wished Elodie luck. The way she lingered near Elodie's things while I answered a call from my mother. "Approximately 8 hours," I answered mechanically. But she shouldn't have crashed this hard, this fast. Someone wanted this to happen. Here. Now. As they lifted Elodie onto a stretcher, her eyelids fluttered again. "Mom?" Her voice was barely audible. I squeezed her hand. "I'm right here, baby. I'm not leaving you." Over the paramedic's shoulder, I caught sight of a familiar cream-colored blazer slipping out the back exit of the recital hall. Sloane. The pieces clicked into place with terrible clarity. The surprise visit this morning. My mother's phone call, emphasizing the importance of Sloane's upcoming wedding. Sloane's barbed comment about Elodie being the golden child. Rage built in my chest. A living, breathing thing with teeth and claws. Asterisk, not now. Not yet. First, Elodie. Then, justice. Asterisk, I followed the stretcher, keeping Elodie's cold hand in mine, my mind already calculating what came next. Someone tried to hurt my child. That someone was family. And they had no idea what they had just awakened. 10 minutes later, the hospital waiting room gleamed with 2 bright fluorescents, casting harsh shadows beneath Sloane's expertly contoured cheekbones. She sat there, one leg crossed, scrolling through her phone, a burgundy nail tapping impatiently against its rose gold case. I stood for a moment, just watching her. My sister. My blood. The woman who poisoned my child. "You switched her medication." My voice cut through the antiseptic quiet. Not a question. Sloane looked up, blinking slowly, like a cat disturbed from a nap. She slipped her phone into her purse, the ghost of a smile playing at her lips. "Well, hello to you too, Meredith." The pills in Elodie's case were sugar. "You replaced her medication with sugar pills." Sloane shrugged one shoulder, that cream blazer rising and falling in a casual dismissal that made my fingers curl into fists. "A little embarrassment might help your kid chill out. Always so perfect. So special." She examined her manicure. "Some kids need to learn that life isn't always perfect." The words struck me like separate blows. My vision narrowed until all I saw was Sloane's unconcerned face. Behind me, the elevator chimed. "Sloane, darling." I came as soon as I heard my mother's voice, breathless with a concern that never quite extended to Elodie in her hospital bed. "Virginia." Holbrook swept in, draped in camel cashmere, her pearl earrings catching the light as she bent to kiss Sloane's cheek. She turned to me with a tight smile. "Meredith, how's Elodie?" "Stable. No thanks to Sloane." Virginia's hand fluttered to her throat. "What are you implying?" "She's not implying anything," Sloane cut in, her voice too sweet. "She's flat out accusing me of tampering with precious Elodie's pills." "And did you?" I demanded, stepping closer. Virginia inserted herself between us. "This isn't the place, Meredith. We need to handle this privately." "Privately?" The word tasted bitter. "Like when you swept Dad's heart condition under the rug until it killed him? Or when Daniel's affair became the family secret everyone whispered about but never addressed?" Sloane stood, smoothing her tailored pants. "She's fine now, right? So no harm done." "No harm." My voice rose, despite my effort to control it. "She could have died, Sloane. Do you understand that?" Her condition, oh please, Sloane interrupted, rolling her eyes. Always so dramatic. She fainted. At a piano recital, not exactly life or death. It is life or death with CAH. Without her. Medication, her body can't. Virginia's hand closed around my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. For a woman in her 60s. Sloane was just trying to help. You coddle that child. Everyone sees it. I wrenched away from her. Help? How exactly does sabotaging her medication help? Sloane checked. Her watch, an anniversary gift from our father that she wore despite having contributed nothing to his care during his illness. Look, we have bigger concerns. We can't let this mess up my wedding plans. The venue requires final payment next week. The callousness stole my breath. In the suspended moment, a message notification chimed from Sloane's phone. She glanced down, her face brightening. Corbin's here. She waved past me. I turned. To see her fiancé striding toward us, all square jaw and Brooks Brothers confidence. He kissed Sloane before acknowledging me with a nod. Meredith. Virginia. His smile didn't reach his eyes. What's this about Elodie? Before I could answer, Virginia touched his arm. Nothing serious, dear. You know how children can be for attention sometimes. For attention? The words escaped in a strangled whisper. Corbin chuckled, an arm around Sloane's waist. Sloane's always been high-spirited. That's what I love about her. High-spirited. I repeated. She tampered with medication that keeps my daughter alive. His smile faltered. Virginia jumped in, her voice honey-smooth. Think about the family reputation, Meredith. About appearances. Something in me splintered. Without another word, I walked away, their voices fading behind me. An hour later, after I assured my daughter was sleeping, I found myself in my father's old study. It was the one room in his house that Virginia hadn't redecorated since his death. The leather chair still held the impression of his body. I sank into it, surrounded by books and the lingering scent of his pipe tobacco that Virginia could never quite eliminate. My fingers traced the edge of his desk, finding the hidden drawer release he showed me as a child. Inside lay his worn leather portfolio. I flipped it open, not sure what I was seeking until I saw the embossed heading. Holbrook Family Trust. Pages of legal language blurred before my eyes until certain phrases leaped out. Meredith and Lawrence, sole trustee. $2.5 million in diversified assets. Disbursements for family education, medical care, and significant life events. And there, in my father's familiar handwriting, a note in the margin beside a highlighted section labeled Moral Turpitude Clause. Any deliberate harm to family members results in disqualification from trust benefits. I stared at the amendment date, 3 weeks before his death. My phone buzzed. Tessa. I'm in the hospital cafeteria, she said when I answered. Elodie's still sleeping. The nurse said it might be another hour. 30 minutes later, we sat across from each other, the portfolio open between us. Tessa's paralegal training made her the perfect ally to decode the dense legal text. Your father made you a trustee for a reason, Meredith, she said quietly. I never knew about Sloane's wedding, I said, tapping the itemized disbursement schedule. $137,000. Charged entirely to the trust. Tessa's eyes narrowed. The moral turpitude clause is clear. Tampering with medication that could have killed Elodie definitely qualifies. I need to be certain, I said. Beyond certain. She slid her tablet across the table, security footage playing. Silently. Sloane backstage at the recital hall, Elodie's bag open beside her. We have the tainted pills, Tessa said. We have the footage. We have her confession. What else do you need? I closed the portfolio, decision crystallizing. Mr. Holbrook's number. 20 minutes later, my father's old friend and attorney confirmed what I already knew. The decision is entirely yours, Meredith. With steady fingers, I sent the email, freezing all trust disbursements effective immediately. My phone rang 10 minutes later. Virginia. What have you done? Her voice trembled. With rage. I ended the call without answering, only to have another message appear seconds later. From Sloan. You'll regret this, a soft knock interrupted. The nurse peered in. Miss Lawrence? Elodie's awake and asking for you. I found my daughter pale against the hospital sheets, her eyes finding mine immediately. Mom, she whispered. I was so scared. I took her hand, small and warm. And alive in mine. No one will ever hurt you like this again, I promised. Not ever. 2 days later, the phone rang for the 5th time that morning. I let it buzz against the kitchen counter while I measured Elodie's medication into her weekly organizer. The rhythm of sorting pills into compartments steadied my breathing, gave my hands something to do besides forming fists. Aren't you going to answer that? Elodie asked, looking up from her breakfast. Her color had returned, but shadows still lingered beneath her eyes. Not important, I said, snapping the compartment closed with a satisfying click. The caller ID flashed Sloan again. I turned the phone face down as it finally stopped ringing, only to immediately light up with a text, asterisk the venue just called. Payment declined? What did you do? Asterisk a flutter of satisfaction rose in my chest, but I swallowed it down. This wasn't about revenge. It was about protection. Elodie watched me with those wise eyes that seemed to absorb everything. Is Aunt Sloan still mad about that? I chose my words carefully. Aunt Sloan is learning that actions have consequences. Like when I don't practice piano and then mess up at lessons. Something like that, I said, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. Except what she did wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. The phone buzzed again. This time it was the florist, asking for Sloan. I declined the call without a twinge of guilt. By afternoon, my email inbox overflowed with forwarded messages from vendors. The caterer threatening collections. The dressmaker demanding immediate payment. The photographer canceling without a deposit. Each message forwarded by Sloan with increasingly hysterical commentary. I was reviewing hospital admission protocols when my office door flew open without a knock. My mother stood in the doorway, her pearl necklace perfectly centered, her mouth a tight line of disapproval. Virginia, I said, not rising from my desk. The use of her first name made her lips purse tighter. How could you? She demanded, closing the door with controlled precision. Your sister is devastated. My daughter could have died. She waved this away like an annoying insect. Elodie was never in real danger. You're being dramatic. The familiar dismissal scraped against old wounds. I'd heard this refrain my entire life. Asterisk Meredith, the overreactor. Meredith, the worrier. Meredith, making mountains from molehills. Asterisk. The endocrinologist disagrees, I said, my voice cool. But I suppose your medical expertise trumps his. This family has survived for 3 generations without airing our dirty laundry, she said, sinking into the chair across from my desk. Your father would be ashamed of how you're treating your sister. The mention of my father ignited something deep in my chest. Don't you dare tell me what he would think. I was married to the man for 42 years. And I was his daughter for 40. I leaned forward. The daughter he trusted enough to make trustee. Virginia's face hardened. A mistake he didn't live long enough to correct. My phone chirped with a text from Tessa. Asterisk got the hospital security footage. It's worse than we thought. Asterisk, I have a meeting, I told Virginia. Standing. This isn't over, Meredith. You're right about that. The barrage intensified over the next 3 days. Cousins called with concerns about my mental state. Sloan posted tearful videos about her ruined special day that racked up sympathetic comments. Anonymous calls to Elodie's school questioned my fitness as a parent. I documented everything. Mr. Holbrook's office was a sanctuary of leather-bound books and polished wood 3 days later. The family attorney looked exactly as he did when I was a child, visiting my father at work, perhaps a bit grayer at the temples, the lines around his eyes deeper. You were right to come, he said. Reviewing the trust documents spread across his desk. What Sloane did constitutes a clear violation of the moral turpitude clause. She claims it was just a prank. He removed his glasses, polishing them methodically. The audio from the hospital security cameras suggests otherwise. We played the recording together. Sloane's voice filled the room, clear and unconcerned. Asterisk, she'll be fine. The kid needs to learn she's not special. Asterisk, my mother's response sent ice through my veins. Asterisk, Meredith has always been too protective. Maybe this will finally teach her. Asterisk, Mr. Holbrook stopped the recording. Your father anticipated something like this might happen. He knew Sloane would endanger Elodie. He knew that when pressured, people reveal their true priorities. He pulled a file from his drawer. There's more to the trust than they know, Meredith. That evening, I found myself in my father's study. The room remained untouched since his death, Virginia insisting it stay preserved out of respect. Now I wondered if she feared what I might find. The bottom desk drawer stuck slightly, just as it always had. Inside, a stack of letters bound with faded blue ribbon. My name and my father's precise handwriting on the top envelope. Asterisk, my dear Meredith. If you're reading this, you've discovered what I long suspected about your mother and sister. Their jealousy runs deeper than you know. Virginia has always resented your independence, and Sloane cannot bear to see attention directed anywhere but herself. I've made you a trustee because you alone understand what truly matters, not appearances or social standing, but integrity and care for others. Trust isn't merely money, it's a test of character. Be stronger than I was. I kept the peace at too high a price. With love and faith in you, Dad. Asterisk. Tears blurred my vision, but something stronger than grief filled my chest. Vindication. Purpose. Resolve. Tessa arrived with a timeline of events she'd meticulously constructed, from Sloane's arrival at our house the morning of the recital to Elodie's collapse hours later. The medical expert's statement came in, she said, handing me a sealed envelope. He's clear that this wasn't a prank. It was a calculated risk that could have resulted in severe medical consequences. I scanned the document. Medical terminology jumping out. Asterisk, acute adrenal crisis. Potentially life-threatening. Deliberate. Tampering. Asterisk, there's more, Tessa said quietly. I found financial discrepancies in the trust accounts. The documents revealed what my father must have suspected: over $70,000 in unauthorized expenses withdrawn by Virginia over the past 3 years. Spa retreats, luxury purchases, weekend getaways labeled as family business. They never thought I'd stand up to them, I realized. They never thought I'd actually look at the records. What are you going to do? Tessa asked. I gathered the evidence into a folder: medical reports, security footage, financial records, my father's letters. The weight of it felt right in my hands. Solid. Undeniable. I'm going to show them exactly who they're dealing with, I said. And it's not who they think. The glossy invitation arrived exactly 7 days after I froze the trust. Thick cream cardstock with gold foil lettering announced a celebration of love for Sloane and Corbin. I noted the careful wording: no mention of wedding anywhere. The address listed was for the Harborview Hotel, not the Botanical Garden Sloane had originally booked. Asterisk, self-funded celebration. Asterisk, I muttered, running my finger across the embossed letters. Tessa sat across from me at my kitchen table, papers spread between us like battle plans. Your mother's been busy, she said, reaching for the invitation. 3 people called me yesterday asking if you were doing okay. Apparently you're having some kind of breakdown. I poured more coffee into my mug, the rich scent momentarily grounding me. Virginia always excelled at mobilizing the troops. My phone buzzed with another text from a cousin. Asterisk, family stands together in difficult times. Hope to see you at Sloane's special day. Asterisk, I set the phone face down without responding. The campaign to paint me as unstable while salvaging Sloane's celebration had been relentless. Social media posts with carefully constructed concern, whispered conversations at church, My mother's tearful phone calls to relatives about her troubled older daughter. Corbin's parents are investing heavily, Tessa said, sliding a printed bank statement toward me. 50,000 transferred yesterday. They don't know what really happened, I replied. The statement joined our growing pile of evidence. Mr. Holbrook's careful documentation sat at the center of our work. Trust statements, withdrawal records, and the highlighted moral turpitude clause. Beside them rested the hospital records, the security footage, still frames, and the damning audio recording of Sloane's own words. We're ready, Tessa said, organizing everything into a leather portfolio. Question is, are you? From the living room, Claire de Lune drifted through the house. Elodie, practicing again after a week of recovery. Her fingers still occasionally stumbled over the passage where she collapsed, but she pushed through with quiet determination. This needs to happen publicly, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. They made this public when they put my daughter on that stage, knowing what would happen. Tessa nodded, her eyes reflecting both concern and respect. She'd known me since college, had seen me bend and yield to family pressure countless times. But she recognized something different now. Dr. Shapiro sent over the final medical documentation this morning, she said. The concentration of cortisol in Elodie's blood confirmed she'd been without medication for exactly the timeline you suspected. He's included a statement about the potential fatal consequences. I closed my eyes briefly, the memory of Elodie's pale face against the piano. Keys still razor-sharp. When I opened them, I caught sight of the small voice recorder on the table, Virginia's unintentional confession captured during a heated hospital corridor confrontation. Asterisk, she was just trying to teach Elodie a lesson about stealing attention. No one thought she would actually collapse like that. Asterisk, my phone rings, Mr. Holbrook, calling with confirmation that all documentation is finalized. As I answer, Tessa collects the scattered papers with practiced efficiency. Everything's in order, Meredith, Mr. Holbrook says, his voice carrying the gravitas of 4 decades of legal experience. The trust terms are explicit. If you choose to proceed, you have absolute authority. I understand, I reply. And I only need to tell the truth once. On the dinner rehearsal day, the Harborview Hotel ballroom glowed with candlelight and floral arrangements when I arrived. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over round tables dressed in ivory linens. Not as lavish as the original botanical garden plans, but impressive given the last-minute arrangements. I smoothed the burgundy silk of my dress, the same shade Elodie wore for her recital. A conscious choice. Heads turned as I walked through the entrance. Conversations paused mid-sentence. In the corner, Virginia froze, champagne flute halfway to her lips. You weren't invited, she hissed, intercepting me before I could fully enter the room. I smiled, the expression not reaching my eyes. Family stands together in difficult times. Isn't that what everyone's been telling me? Before Virginia could respond, Sloane appeared, resplendent in ivory satin. Her smile looked painful at the edges. Meredith, she said, voice carrying for the benefit of nearby guests. What a surprise. But family is family, right? Her eyes told a different story, a warning wrapped in artificial welcome. Across the room, Corbin's parents watched with confusion, clearly unaware of the undercurrents. His mother leaned toward his father, whispering something that made him frown. Wouldn't miss it, I replied, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server. Beautiful arrangements. I moved past them into the crowd, nodding at familiar faces, engaging in light conversation with key guests, Corbin's elderly grandmother, his father's business partner, the family pastor. All while Virginia hovered nervously at the periphery of each interaction. Sloane's composure fractured slightly each time she caught sight of me, calmly conversing with another guest. The control she expected to maintain slipped with every passing minute. When Tessa arrived 45 minutes later, heads turned again, not because they recognized her, but because of the subtle tension. that followed her entrance. She carried a small clutch that held a thumb drive with our complete documentation. Our eyes met across the room. She gave an imperceptible nod. I drained my champagne glass and set it on a nearby table. The time for polite conversation had ended. The carefully rehearsed confrontation I'd prepared for began now. As Sloane tapped her glass for attention, preparing to make her first toast as the celebrated bride-to-be, I moved quietly toward the small stage where the string quartet had been playing. Calculation, not emotion, guided each step. Behind me, Tessa approached the hotel's audiovisual technician with a thumb drive. Sometimes protection requires confrontation. Sometimes justice demands an audience. The dinner plates were cleared as Corbin's father rose, tapping his glass for attention. The traditional toasts began, heartfelt words about new beginnings and family bonds that twisted in my chest like a knife. Sloane beamed as speaker after speaker praised her kindness, her generosity, her loving nature. Each compliment felt like sandpaper against my skin. Finally, Sloane herself stood, glass raised high. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. Family has always been everything to me. Her eyes scanned the room, landing briefly on me. To families standing together through thick and thin. The room responded with enthusiastic applause. Before it died down, I rose from my seat. May I say a few words? I asked, my voice carrying across the suddenly quieting room. Sloane's smile froze as I walked to the front. Virginia half rose from her chair before Mr. Holbrook's hand on her arm stopped her. Someone handed me the microphone. I took a slow breath, centering myself. I'd like to speak about what family truly means, I began, my voice steady. Despite the hammering in my chest, behind me, Tessa had connected the thumb drive to the projector. The screen behind me flickered to life. My daughter nearly died at her recital because of what happened in this family. A murmur rippled through the gathered guests. Sloane's smile dropped completely. These are Elodie's medical records. I gestured to the projected image of hospital documentation. Her condition, congenital adrenal hyperplasia, requires daily medication. Without it, her body can't produce necessary hormones, leading to collapse and potentially death. I clicked to the next slide. Security footage from the recital hall showed Sloane alone backstage, opening Elodie's bag. This is my sister, tampering with my daughter's medication case. The room fell silent. And this. I pressed play on an audio file. Sloane's voice filled the room. Asterisk, she'll be fine. The kid needs to learn she's not special. Asterisk, Virginia's voice followed. Asterisk, no real harm done. Meredith overreacts to everything. Asterisk, I advanced to the next slide, the trust documents, with the moral turpitude clause highlighted in yellow. My father established this trust to protect our family, to support medical needs and education. Not this. I clicked again, revealing photos of spa retreats, luxury purchases, and the $137,000 wedding budget, all charged to the trust. Virginia surged to her feet. She's always been jealous of Sloane, but her outburst only drew attention to the financial evidence detailing years of embezzlement from the family trust. Corbin stepped away from Sloane, his face ashen. Is this true? You tampered with a child's medication. She's twisting everything. Sloane's voice rose in panic. It wasn't dangerous. It was just to teach her a lesson about what? Corbin interrupted. About not stealing attention from you? About daring to have talent. He pulled the engagement ring from his finger and placed it on the table. I can't be part of this. Around the room, guests began gathering purses and jackets, murmuring excuses. Corbin's parents stood stiffly, their horror evident as they followed their son toward the exit. Virginia collapsed into her chair, the social queen dethroned as her carefully cultivated world crumbled around her. Sloane made one last desperate attempt, rushing toward me. You've ruined everything. This was my night. No, I said quietly, disconnecting the thumb drive. You did that yourself when you endangered my child. I walked toward the exit, pausing only to address Mr. Holbrook. The trust will now serve its original purpose. Behind me, the rehearsal. Dinner dissolved into whispers and departures, justice delivered in the most fitting way possible, through simple, unvarnished truth. 6 months after the incident, golden light streamed through the tall windows of the hospital conservatory, bathing the glossy black grand piano in warmth. Elodie's fingers danced across the keys, her burgundy dress matching the velvet bench cushion beneath her. The melody of Fur Elise floated through the air, gathering a small audience of young patients in wheelchairs and 4 poles. I stood in the doorway, transfixed. My breath caught in my throat as Elodie finished with a flourish. That wasn't there before, a confidence that bloomed across her face when the last note hung in the air. She's remarkable, Tessa whispered beside me, her shoulder brushing mine. Harold would be so proud. A lump formed in my throat. Dad always knew she had something special. The children applauded, their thin arms raising with enthusiasm that belied their medical charts. A small boy with a bald head and Superman pajamas inched closer to the piano. Can you teach me? His voice barely carried across the room. Elodie slid to the edge of the bench, patting the space beside her. Of course. We'll start with something simple. I watched as my daughter guided his small fingers to the white keys, showing the same patience my father once showed her. The trust documentation tucked in my bag felt lighter now, papers that transformed the Holbrook Family Trust into the Holbrook Children's Music Therapy Foundation. Virginia called, Tessa says, keeping her voice low. She's putting her condo on the market. I nodded, unsurprised. The trust audit didn't leave her many options. And Sloan. Portland, last I heard. Corbin's family helped her relocate. I didn't elaborate on the restraining order that prevents my sister from coming within 500 feet of Elodie. Some wounds heal cleaner with distance. Across the conservatory, Elodie beamed as the boy plunked out a recognizable "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." The other children clapped, their faces bright with something that's been too rare in these halls, pure joy. 3 cousins called this week, I told Tessa. Suddenly everyone wants to reconnect. Tessa snorted. Amazing how righteousness becomes attractive when it's backed by a multi-million-dollar trust. I'm being selective about which branches of the family tree I water. The sunlight shifted, casting rainbow prisms through the crystal paperweight on the piano. Dad's old desk ornament, now serving as Elodie's good luck charm. 6 months ago, I could barely breathe through the panic. Now, boundaries rise strong as castle walls around what matters most. Mr. Holbrook appeared beside us, his bow tie as perfectly centered as his moral compass. The scholarship committee approved 5 recipients for the fall program. He nodded toward Elodie. Your father always said music heals what medicine can't reach. Next month, Elodie will perform *Claire de Lune * again. Same recital hall, same piece, but nothing else the same. Not the circle around us. Not the trust's purpose, not the woman I've become. We're planning something special for the anniversary recital, I told him. Elodie's idea, a duet with that young cellist from oncology. Tessa squeezed my arm. From crisis to creation, that's your superpower, Mare. I watched my daughter lean toward the boy, her hands steady over his as they found the next note together. This smaller circle, purged of poison, built on truth, feels more like family than the sprawling tree I was born into. Sometimes, I said, protecting what matters means standing alone until you realize you never really were. The music continues, imperfect and beautiful, flowing from small hands learning to create rather than destroy. In this moment, the healing isn't just Elodie's, it's all of ours.